let's dive right in. The second and final list of ministerial nominees has been sent to the Senate for screening and confirmation. 2 women and 5 former governors are included in the list of 19 nominees. It brings the total number of President Tinubu's ministerial nominees to 47.
We'll have a report on that in a minute. But for analysis of this latest list and the ministerial nominees in general, we're now joined by Arise analyst Mahmud Jega and our Director of News and Politics editor Sumner Sambo. Let's begin with you, and thanks for being here with us. As we said in the introduction, 47 ministerial nominees right now, and we're at a crucial point in Nigeria where we're talking about reducing the cost of governance. What's the rationale behind having so many ministers? Was there a plan to create more ministries or more ministers of state, or is it a case of trying to appease all the people who sort of helped out during the election? What's your take?
I'm sure the most important consideration was political. The president had a lot of balancing act to do, even though in the end, even 47 does not accommodate many people who are speculated in the media, because I mean, there are hundreds of people. Can't have all of them in as ministers, but still the number 47 is quite large, because the constitutional requirement is that at least there must be 1 per state. And recently there was agitation that the FCT should also have 1, which will make 37. But 47 is 10 more than that, more than the precedent set, for example, by former President Obasanjo, who used to add 1 per geopolitical zone. But I'm sure it was all propelled by political considerations. The president had so many people to appease, and he brought this 47. But certainly it will make for agitation and criticism from several quarters.
Sumner from our outside studio, thank you for joining us as well. Let's begin to take a look at the composition of that list. Of course, Dele Alake had said, well, more ministries might be created. Benjamin Abela also made an allusion to that. But then you begin to look at the list, and then you see former governors coming on the list again. Some would say that might be like rehashing the old blocks. So what do you think?
Well, with a total of 9 former governors on that list now, it's very clear that President Tinubu is sending a clear signal to his political opponents, especially Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi, that should, in case there's any call for a rerun in the presidential election, he's good to go. His cabinet is one that can withstand any test in any future contest. And if that doesn't happen, and it happens that he's going for a second term, these are the same people who will be out there for him in 2027, canvassing for votes for him. And so it's a very large list of cabinet members, and a lot of people have been taking a second look at this. The highest number of persons in the cabinet since 1960. What exactly is Tinubu trying to achieve? This in times of emergency, national emergency, would look like a wartime cabinet. But like I said earlier, it's very clear that these are people who will be foot soldiers for him to rejig the economy, to ensure that he has a political foothold over the country, and then to ensure that the business of governance moves very fast, and then he eventually compensates lots of people who have helped him out. My thinking is that when he eventually balances, if indeed he's either victorious at the court or not, what he will do is that he may likely shelve this cabinet later on or maybe in his second year if he's lucky to have such. And as it stands right now, the questions we should be asking ourselves is, does this government actually think about the cost of governance? Because these are the things Nigerians will be asking. If you say that the economy is facing critical challenges and you're bringing a cabinet of 47, then of course there's a challenge. But of course, there are some good things that we can notice there. For the first time since the return to the Fourth Republic, we are seeing a minister being appointed for the Federal Capital Territory. And I think this is another good political point that has been scored by President Tinubu in areas where people have failed in the past, including the former President Muhammad Buhari. We can see that he has scored a very good point here by bringing the people of the FCT into having a sense of belonging. And then, of course, you look at the young people there. You look at Bosun Tijani, for example, someone who's an ICT expert who was able to bring the likes of Mark Zuckerberg into the country, and then of course he's been rolling with all the tech giants. I'm thinking that with people like him, Marian Shetty, and some other young blood in this forthcoming cabinet, as large as it looks very bright. But my only major fear is, how are they going to manage the cost of governance, which will have to do with these ministers coming with their special advisors, senior special assistants, personal assistants, and all of that. I think the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and the Chief of Staff to the President should sit down with Mr. President and see how they can cut all of these people that may want to bring others into the cabinet so as not to have a bloated government.
Thank you, Samna. Very quickly, let's see that report, and then we'll be back with a chat with the gentleman of the House. Stay with us.
For the second time in 1 week, the Senate invoked relevant sections of its rule book to permit the emissary from President Bola Tinubu, in the person of his Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, to deliver the second batch of the list of those the President wants to hire into his cabinet. President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, later unveiled the list of 19 ministerial nominees. Prominent on the list are 5 former governors: Adegboyega Oyetola from Osun State, Atiku Bagudu from Kebbi State, Simon Lalong from Plateau State, Bello Matawali from Zamfara State, and Ibrahim Gendam, Yobe State.
In compliance with the provisions of Section 147, subsection 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, and further to my earlier correspondence dated 27th day of July 2023, I am pleased to forward to you the underlisted 19 ministerial nominees for confirmation by the Senate.
Also on the list are former National Assembly members. These include Senator Heineken Lokobri from Bayelsa State and Senator Aliu Sabi from Niger State. Former member of the House of Representatives, Savannah Gisalo from the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. It's the first time in the Fourth Republic that an indigene of the Federal Capital Territory will be nominated for ministerial appointment since 1999. Others are Uba Meigari, Tunji Alausa, Tanko Sunono, Lola Adejon, Tahir Mama, Alkali Ahmed, Shuaibu Abubakar, Isak Salako, Bosun Tijani, Miriam Shetty, and Ahmed Tijani to complete the list of ministerial nominees. The screening of the second batch of nominees will begin on Friday. Before this, the Senate had concluded the screening of the first batch of ministerial nominees same day, where the minority leader was ruled out of order for asking the ministerial nominee from Ekiti State, Dele Alaki, to recite the second stanza of the national anthem.
He appears to have brought politics into this thing by asking the nominee standing before us to recite any of the stanzas of the national anthem, which of course is a piece of cake. But because that had not been our tradition, and we had not done this to any of the other nominees, if I did not say this, I'm moving that question or request be expunged, because if it is not, and we rule that he will not reside it will look as if we had something to hide. It is irrelevant to the extent of the provisions of Order 52 sub 4, and I so move.
The leadership of the Senate also rose in strong defense of Alake, the right-hand man of President Bola Tinubu, shielding him from responding to allegations that refer to some opposition members as wild dogs on his social media handle.
I've read on social media, sir, your statement concerning other political parties during the election. I read a statement where you label supporters of a particular presidential candidate as wild dogs, buying blood on social media. Have you come across that statement? Are you aware of it? Did you say that?
Campaigns are over. We are now in governance. That is why once you pass through that door, you are coming into the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Alake had earlier told lawmakers that without internal national security, road and electricity infrastructure, not much can be done to boost investments in tourism. Alake pushed strongly for press freedom, but not in absolute terms and without a sense of responsibility. Next was the ministerial nominee from Niger State, Mohammed Idris, the publisher of Blueprint newspaper, who answered questions on the media and several national issues. The Senate also grilled the ministerial nominee from Kwara State, Lateef Fagbemi, one of the lead counsels to President Tinubu at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. The Senate rounded off the screening with the nominees from Bauchi State, renowned medical expert Professor Ali Pate and finance expert Doris Uzoka from Imo State. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Right, we're still joined by Arise analyst Mahmud Jega and our political editor Samna Sando. Mahmud Jega, you've seen that report. Just what's your assessment of this confirmation or screening, ministerial screening by the Senate?
Well, one of the things was that the Senate president was trying to hurry things up because there are so many nominees, and some took more time than others, but clearly there was a need to accelerate the process. But then, of course, also he tried to protect some of the nominees from uncomfortable situations, because like asking an elderly person to recite the second stanza of the national anthem was just meant to trip him. It doesn't really have much practical value. I mean,
it doesn't have much to do with his competence.
It doesn't have. I mean, when we were in secondary school, the national anthem was changed. This one came much later. So if you ask me now, the second stanza, I mean, at least the first stanza, we recite it on many occasions. So some of the nominees also are quite outstanding, especially the ones who are the most professional, like the lawyer Fagbemi from Kwara, and also Professor Ali Pate, who is a medical man who came from Gavi Foundation. He was made to speak at great length about some of the country's health problems, and it was quite outstanding. And there was also the lady from Imo State, who is a medical doctor turned banker, and she also acquitted herself very well. All the others generally did, but there were few sparks in the whole screening process, I think, compared to previous occasions. Largely thanks maybe to the Senate President, who tried to sanitize the process.
All right, back to the second list. Samna, I'd just like to ask you this. Let's talk about representation. One of the important aspects of assessing a government's cabinet is representation. And I'm sure you know where I'm going to, how many women we have on the list. 2 more now, that's 9 out of 47. It's not up to the 35%. It's not even up to 20%. So is it that there's not enough women in the whole country? to be made ministers, Samna?
Not really. You know, when it comes to appointments, there are several stratas of appointments. In this instance, we've seen the ministerial list out. There's going to be ambassadorial list. We are going to have other board members and all of that. So maybe the thinking could be within the government and the president's inner circles to be that his whole understanding of his 35% promise actually means all appointive positions and not just a ministerial not just the ministerial positions. I'm just thinking, I mean, that's my own thought about it. But it's very, very important. But I'm thinking that the quality of women that we've seen so far is one that is, that meets the demands of the times. Look at the women that have been nominated, young, able, very, very sound women, actually. I never knew that some of them were so smart like this until, for example, some of them that I saw, I mean, the lady who came from Imo State today and who stood on the floor of the Senate discharged herself, very, very well. And look at Mariam Shetty, for example. Not many Nigerians know that she's a physiotherapist that she had to, I mean, she worked some time ago, I think, in the London Olympics with this popular Jamaican sprinter who is well known. I mean, I'm forgetting his name right now. And then you look at Ade John, Lola Ade John, who is being brought in. Now, she's a banker, prolific banker who has worked in several areas. And then you look at Dr. Betta Edu and all of that. So I think the women should be happy about the quality of women that are being brought in here. And then ensure that these women discharge themselves very well. But I'm thinking also that there are some people who have been left out. There are some other names that I thought would be in this cabinet. I mean, apart from women alone, there are others that I didn't see. So I think we should have that conversation too. Why don't we have the likes of Femi Fani-Kayode on the list, or Bayo Onanuga, or Festus Keyamo, or even Kayode Fayemi? What made President Tinubu to leave out Kayode Fayemi out of the club of former governors? I mean, 9. Why didn't he make it 10? And so these are part of the conversations that will continue to interrogate. But on the issues of women, I think the government's thinking will be that maybe women will be rewarded with other positions.
Very well. I think Nkechi is trying to make a case for agenda. Not a bad idea. Well, in general, would you now say this constitution, this list, looks like a compilation of the people, a team, that can deliver on the campaign promises of Mr. President? And then what should Nigerians be expecting?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, Sambo.
Okay, well, Nigerians must not just take these members of this proposed cabinet just like that. Yes, we've seen some very good signs here, and then of course there are some very, very poor signs among some of the appointees, some of the former governors, some of them that are really worn out, that we didn't expect to be on this list. They are there, but of course you should know that they are there for political compensation. And what I'm saying is that Nigerians should track these ministers, hold them to account. These ministers should know that they are coming at a difficult time when this country is expecting so much from the Tinubu cabinet. But I'm thinking that in this 47-man list that Tinubu has drawn up, there's going to be what looks like the first 11. And those first 11 and second 11 is what Tinubu will actually be looking up to, like about 20 out of this 47-member list. The rest will just be politicians here and there. And for the first time, we may likely have a situation whereby we go back to the politics of the First or Second Republic, where you may likely have ministers without portfolios. Because where are we going to get the ministries to put them? 47 ministries cannot be created. Nigeria is bleeding at this moment. And so, for the few ones that are able to become the substantive ministers or become minister of state, if we follow that route, Nigerians must make sure that we track them. It should start from the cost of governance. Let's make sure they don't have serial numbers of SA, PAs, SSAs, and all of that. And then also, we must ensure that the young people who are in the government know why they are there. Representation is very important, like Nkechi has said. This number of young people that are being brought into government are to ensure that they deliver, so that the huge population of young people we have in the country will not have a reason to rise against the government. But it looks good for now, but we have to ensure proper accountability.
Samuel, that's very important, proper accountability. And I just want Mahmud Jega to continue from where you stopped, just basically talking about the whole list in general. How is your assessment of the people, the quality of people on this list? And when I'm talking about the quality of people, I'm not even talking about the former governors. I'm talking about the technocrats that have been included on this list.
Okay, you see, there are really some very good technocrats in the list, even though, you know, in recent decades in Nigeria, the gap between what we call technocrats and politicians has actually narrowed, because there are a lot of technocrats in politics. Many retired security people, diplomats, civil servants, and all kinds of bankers and lawyers and doctors are also in politics now. So the gap has really closed. But you see, the next most important stage after these ministers are cleared and confirmed by the Senate is what the president will do next, which is assign them to portfolios. At that point, he will have to take the very important decision. You know, there are speculations based on what some of his aides said, that he may abolish the position of Minister of State. But if he does that, then it's like you need 47 ministries to accommodate this. So I doubt if he will go on that path. He probably must have to retain the position of Minister of State. Now, having good technocrats is one thing. Placing them in the right position is another, because, you know, even in previous governments, we had some people who were ordinarily very good in their professions, but probably were posted to some ministries that were outside their immediate area of competence. You know, if that happens, a person may not be able really to display all his talent. So it's a very important next step. And then what Sumner said, even if you put square pegs in square holes and round pegs in round holes, the citizens must still continue to be vigilant throughout the tenure of the administration.
Thank you very much indeed, Mahmud Jega, Rise analyst, and of course, our Director of News and Politics Editor, Samuel Sambo. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight.